some kind of symmetrical argument.
For example, and they just happened to be doing something. He felt the median was a better representation than average in this situation. You know, it's like the expression, the average depth of the river is 3 feet, but you got a spot that's 12 feet, and that could, you know, bring the average wave, and people would drown. So we know the difference between median and average, but he's just saying that he thought the median was a better representation about the amount what it would be. Okay,
just to be precise here, what he said was that the median expenditure was around $1,300 per congregation, and that $1,300 corresponds to about 2% of the average budget. So I think putting those two numbers together is pretty. I think that's. I think it's fair, and I think it's representative of. And I don't think there's anything misleading about, you know, the fact that one's the median, the other's an average. I think that's pretty clear.
He said that
I wanted to say something about the effect of there's a very interesting biasing effect in this research that you mentioned in your question. When when you study what makes people donate to charity, the research shows that one of the biggest factors in how much people donate is simply how often they're asked. And so there's an effect there where if you're in a church, you're going to be asked more often. And some people know lots of people in church, or they know lots of people in different kinds of organizations, so they get asked more often. So that means that the people in these organizations, you might think that they've become more generous because they're in these organizations, but in fact they're donating more often simply because they're asked more often.
They know a soft touch when they see one. Gloria.
Gloria Kingsley. I just wanted to thank you for all of the statistical information, which I think would be very helpful in talking to my friends who sometimes won't believe this information if we just talk in generalities. However, there's something that I question, and that is, or I wonder if you don't agree, that most of the hospitals that are called Catholic or Jewish or whatever were originally founded by a Catholic organization or a Jewish organization. I mean, Mount Sinai certainly was founded by Jewish people, and the New York Presbyterian, Cornell Weill, those were founded by these religious groups, and therefore I think that's why, in my opinion, that's why they're called by the religious names.
Okay,
and,
that's fair. That's fair.
I wouldn't want to, just negate the fact that these hospitals are religious completely.
I still think it's a little misleading to refer to them as religious organizations. But you have
Well, we don't. Do you know what their bylaws say? I mean, this is very important. What does the New York Hospital Presbyterian say in its bylaws? What does Mount Sinai say? That is where the fact of whether they're religious or non-religious, and now they're all mostly non-partisan anyhow. They treat people of every religion or non-religion. They don't ask you.
They treat everyone the same, so they're not religious hospitals.
Well, what is their foundation? What do their bylaws say?
Their bylaws say we bring in a whole bunch of money and pay a bunch of doctors to help people,
is that
and then we try not to spend all the money so we don't go out of business.
Whatever it is, I'm sure that if I spoke to a Jewish friend and told her that Mount Sinai was not a Jewish hospital, they would be very offended, and I think personally rightly so.
What about it is Jewish?
Because they were founded by Jewish people.
But they're not practicing that ground today.
What about a Catholic
They
hospital
don't
with
have to
nuns and
practice.
nurses?
They don't have to practice their religion to say that it was founded by Jewish people. Anyhow, your total overall approach is excellent. Okay,
Thank
I
you.
agree with it.
Thank you.
Hi. I'm sure you and everyone in the audience is familiar with the recent thing that happened with the Susan G. Komen Foundation and how they pulled money from Planned Parenthood. And then I was reading about it recently, and I saw apparently Planned Parenthood saw a huge spike in donations from individuals as a result of that news story. And forgive me if you already covered this, I didn't see the whole video, but have you seen, as someone that reads about these things a lot, have you seen any other incidents like this where something political happens that people don't agree with and then the general public donate to a secular charity as a result, kind of in rebellion?
You know, it sounds familiar. I think I've seen other backlashes like that, but I can't remember the specifics. So it's to me that's more of a that's more of a political issue. I think of that as politics, and so it's not really part of my study.
Let me just answer part of Gloria's question about the religious holidays. I know specifically many of the reasons that the Jewish hospitals were started was that Jewish doctors had a quota system and they couldn't get into many medical schools. But even worse than that, because I was told that this situation within a couple of months ago, they had no place to do their residency. And what they did is they solved a lot of problems. They opened up Jewish hospitals so these doctors could do their residency. Also, the Jewish patients were complaining. They weren't represented, they didn't get good service in the normal hospitals. Now, outside of New York City, we had a city hospital system. But outside the country, they needed a place to go. So it was a combination. The same thing with the Catholic hospital. Huh? And the food was terrible, right. And also with the Catholic hospitals, they also felt, that's why they started their parochial schools, they felt that they were second-class citizens. They were treated very poorly by the Protestants, so they tried to start their own hospital system to take care of their own. But that's long over. That's been over for 50 to 100 years. Now they're operating, as we're saying, they're operating, getting government money and getting all the credit. Good.
I just want
I
to.
think you have to be. Before your question, let me just throw this in. It's easy to lose track of the definitions of the terms when we're talking about religion. Take the idea of a Jewish hospital, and if we ask in what way is it Jewish, and someone can say, well, it was founded by Jews, and that doesn't answer my question. Let's say, so if the Jewish hospital closes on Friday evening and doesn't open until Sunday morning, that would be kind of a Jewish thing, right? But I bet Jewish hospitals aren't like that. And if there are certain attributes of the deity that Jews believe in, for example, vengefulness or something, how would that translate into the services that they provide at the hospital? Is there a connection there?
Also, if people give because they feel obligated or they feel afraid of a dualistic, punishing God. Another point that you made is that religion is a product, and so they're kind of buying a product. Now, my question has to do with, there's churches and there's televangelists. And I saw a televangelist, I can't remember his name, it was Dr. Ted something. And his pitch, literally, was give me money and you'll get money soon. And that's really,
That's not just him, that's several of them.
well, he said, and he had stories like back in January 1967 when I was a young minister with not a pot to piss in, and he had the folksy language and everything. He said, well, I went to a jamboree or something, and I gave my last $250, and lo and behold, next week somebody came and gave me $1,000. And he really, and they took credit cards and the whole thing. So he pure greed, nothing else.
Right.
I have nothing to add to that. You're great, nothing else.
Sweet Daddy Grace, Reverend Ike, all of these people are using that one.
Are the religious hospitals not-for-profit organizations?
Most hospitals.
Some are nonprofits. I mean, technically, some are registered as 501c3 corporations, others are not.
And Ken says most hospitals are not-for-profit. Is that-
Yeah, most hospitals, I believe, are not-profit.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know
There are a
that.
whole group of for-profit hospitals. They're out around this country.
Okay,
The vast
thank you.
majority are nonprofit.
I have a question about the concept of generosity as well, although from a different point of view. I really have a problem with someone saying they're generous because they give to a faith-based organization and they stop someone from having an abortion, or they stop some type of social covenant that we've had for many, many years in this country, or they use their money for politics to defund social services for the poor because it in some way violates their faith when it has nothing to, where faith has no space in the secular aspect. Censorship of books. Okay, you can go into libraries and you'll find faith-based organizations saying that you can't have these databases, you can't have these books. You have this in higher ed, you have this in trying to teach intelligent design, where there's money that's going in, and it's going towards...
Lots of money going there.
Lots of money going there.
Yeah.
And so when you define generally generosity is considered something generous. Okay, but how you define it is very, very dangerous unless you really qualify it in some way, and that's my statement.
Well, we have this really funny thing. We have this really funny system in the United States, which is we have the tax code says that you can give money to something called a nonprofit corporation. And if you give money to them, then your donation is sort of discounted because you can take it off your taxes, and so it's cheaper. You get a discount on that service that you're buying. But not-for-profit, anyone can decide to be a not-for-profit corporation. In fact, churches, I think I didn't mention this yesterday, there's a form 1023 that you file with the IRS if you want to become a 501c3 not-for-profit organization. If I wanted to start a non-profit corporation, I would file a form 1023, I think that's what it is, and there's an exception. There's one kind of organization that doesn't have to file that form to show that it does good things for the community, and that's churches. Churches don't have to file Form 1024. All you do is when you file your taxes, you put "we are a church," and then you get all these tax credits, all these benefits from government. In other words, you get subsidies from the rest of the United States. So. It's built into the tax code that that being a not-for-profit organization is a public good, and then specifically being a church is a kind of not-for-profit organization that represents a public good. If you're a church, you are a public good, and that's baked in to our laws right now. I could send $100 to the Westboro Baptist Church to help them travel around the country and carry signs that say "God hates fags" when they travel around. That would be a tax-deductible contribution.
Yes, no, I just read about that part of the tax code recently myself, and that you sort of automatically get your 501c3 status if you're a church as opposed to other charitable organizations. I think it's outrageous. I don't think they have that status anyway, but not why I came up here. I wanted to thank you for your research, because I think it's kind of mind-blowing that people had sort of drawn these conclusions that religious people are so much more generous based on self-reporting studies that are so obviously flawed. I mean, first the self-reporting, which is obviously people are going to lie. And, second of all, anything scientific has to be empirical, as you pointed out, and there is no way to quantify generosity or religiosity. And I would also point out that maybe some of these people who claim to be religious may very well have been atheists, who live in a community where it was not okay to say that you aren't religious.
Oh, absolutely.
So I would, just put that forth, and thank you for your time.
Sure.
Thank you
Yeah.
for your question.
I think I didn't mention one of my favorite studies that I read about in my research. Perry and Crossley. There's a wonderful paper that was published in 1950, where there was at that time there was an organization in Denver, Colorado called the Community Chest. This later became the United Way, the Community Chest went door to door and they collected donations. And they had kept records of who had donated and who hadn't donated. Perry and Crossley independently did a survey, I think by telephone, I can't remember. And they contacted all these households and they asked people, did you give to the Community Chest during the pledge drive last fall? And they asked, maybe 1,000 people, I can't remember the exact number. And then they took their records and they went down to the Community Chest offices and they checked to see who they could see at the Community Chest. For everyone who said yes on their survey, they had their name and they could go in and see, John Smith says that he donated. Let's see, did John Smith donate? And they found out that 40% of the people who had told them that they gave to the Community Chest a few months earlier had not. 40% of the people who said that they had donated actually did not donate. And there's a wonderful line in the paper where they sum up their results by saying, we conclude that this kind of question is not very useful for research.
They probably didn't wash their hands either.
Yeah. So if you ask people how good they are, they will say, oh, I'm very good. And you haven't learned anything. There's even a special case in terms of self-reporting when it comes to religion, and this is kind of a subtle point. Part of the idea of religion is that when you join up, so to speak, if you think of it as joining a club and agreeing to the terms of the club, a lot of the rules of the club have to do with what you're going to say. So, for example, if someone asks you, do you believe in God with all your heart, you're supposed to say yes. It's not just that people in the club try to believe in God. It's more that they have a rule that they say they believe in God, and that's, I think, is really, really important. If you say to someone, "I'm deeply devoted to God," it could be because you've believe yourself to be devoted. It also could be because people have told you that that's a great thing to say.
It's what you need to do.
When you do a survey, there's no way to tease those motivations apart.
Okay. Okay, we have another question, Jeff?
Yes, I don't pretend to be a scientist, and I have a very murky idea of scientific methodology. But I guess my murky notion of a study, a survey of this kind is that sometimes some people involved in such a survey like to put together some kind of control group or something. And so my essential question is simply, are you aware of any methodology that anybody has developed for assembling the type of survey study that Chavez did for atheists? Because I think atheists are neglected in this equation, and I'm wondering whether or not you're aware of any such study along Chavez's lines where some reliable methodologies have been developed, showing what is the level of giving for atheists. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, I don't. I'm not aware of any study like that that was targeted to atheists specifically. I haven't seen that done. I mean, in a way it doesn't matter, because what we're showing with this, what I find in the research that I'm doing is that the statistics that are supposedly showing data about religious believers haven't actually shown us anything. So the atheists don't have anything to compete with.
Okay, are you ready? What should we as atheists do now? Should we become more generous and open up soup kitchens? Or should we just...
Renew your membership.
That's not helping other people. That's not generosity.
We'll give 2%.
So No, seriously, I'd like to know what you think our stance should be in this whole issue.
Well, it's not an atheist question. It's not about what atheists should do, in my opinion. It's about what do you want to do? Do you want to help people? Then help people. It's a completely independent question from what kind of, I mean, that's almost like, I mean, the reductio ad absurdum of this would be, imagine that we were not a group of atheists. Imagine that we were a bowling league, and we get together once a week to go bowling, and then at one of our bowling in one of our sessions, or whatever they're called, one of us says, well, what do you think bowlers should do to help human welfare, to be more generous? Well, bowlers don't have to do anything. People do. We want people to do good things, and good people will do good things. People who aren't so good won't do those things. And there are good and bad atheists, and there are good and bad so-called believers. It's not that the whole point is that believing in God doesn't make you a better person or worse. It's basically irrelevant from a moral point of view. From a moral point of view, being a good person and helping other people, making the world a better place, has nothing to do with whether you're a Catholic or a Jew or an atheist or any of those things.
Right, so there's no moral imperative upon us because we're atheists. We're not required to, as atheists, to even out the score. It's like we talked about yesterday, that it's not a symmetrical argument. There's no moral equivalency.
Yeah, but I hear it so frequently, especially from new people to our organization. Let's open a soup kitchen. Well,
why not? I mean, why not?
Because it's boring, and because those people. I have more.
We'll open up an exciting soup kitchen.
No, we won't, because they only.
Spicy soup kitchen.
Wait a minute, I'm not through.
I was going to ask you what kind of soup. Tomato or vegetable?
Crab
But the point is, Dennis, I mean.
By the way, I not only do I wash my hands, I launder my money. So
I don't want to open a soup kitchen because I think these poor people were made poor by the 1% of our population who are capitalists. They made them poor. Let them open the soup kitchens. I'm not going to do it for them.
We can call it
We give blood. Yes, we give blood. That's what we do.
Well, that's how they made their money, by not giving to charity. No, but it has been established, and I can't give you the exact figures, that most charities, even the secular ones, Red Cross, etc., maintain most of their monies that they accumulate to the executives, and a very low percentage goes to any kind of do-goodness kind of thing. Help the unemployed, or help the people who were made the oil spill, etc.
it's the Mother Teresa syndrome.
Yeah.
Well,
that's an awfully broad brush. I'm not sure I believe that charities in general spend the vast majority of their income for executive salaries.
No,
I don't think
in fact, I think there is a website that evaluates charities, religious and secular, based on the percentage of money that
I
goes
actually
into
heard a discussion on NPR yesterday, the day before, that Mother Teresa actually devoted less time and less monies
Yes.
to the charities that
Yes.
are supposedly...
It all went to the convents. Most of it went to the convents, and when she died, she was hooked up to $250,000 worth of medical equipment.
Right.
Well, I'd like to throw this out to the audience. Should we open up a soup kitchen at New York City Atheists?
Well, we have to water it down.
Hello. Put up those.
I just like,
We'll be here all week. We should have tipped the waitress.
I just like to define a non-profit or not-for-profit organization. Just means that you can't make a profit. You can do that by raising your own salary, so that there's no money left to, pay dividends or anything.
Sure.
That's right.
You can lower your net by buying property, things like that. So yeah, there is some funny money involved in some of these things, but I think that we can. Never mind. Go ahead.
Well, I just want to throw something out there. I mean, I think when we're talking about generosity and giving to charity, they're not always equal or really the same thing. Like, to me personally, like someone that devotes their life to being a social worker and making shit for money their entire lives is a hell of a lot more generous than some, pardon, you know, any Wall Street people here, but pardon me for saying, but some Wall Street asshole that makes a shitload of money and once in a while signs a check to whatever charity he chooses. I mean, I think generosity can be measured in very different ways.
And Schiller was the term that Schiller used in his report, by the way.
You can have a trader who makes zillions of dollars, and then once a year he writes a check for, you know, maybe he gives $1 million to UNICEF or something, while the social worker you're talking about is too poor to give any money to UNICEF, but she actually spends her entire life helping people. So yeah, it's a charity and donating to nonprofit organizations are not the same thing.
Okay, any last questions?
Someone who hasn't asked a question. Okay.
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 Okay, why don't you think?